Chapter 21, Last Goodbyes. Since I never really enjoyed going to school, it seems rather ironic that I continued to go to school years after I graduated. Unfortunately, the school I continued to attend showed that I was thick-headed instead of egg-headed. At every turn of my life, I found myself enrolled in the school of hard knocks, the school of fools that taught lessons the hard way through old-fashioned pain, suffering, and misery due to the bad choices that you made. Sometimes the lesson was learned at once, the immediate result of a recent bad decision. At other times, the misery and the suffering came a long time after that fateful choice or series of bad choices. The time frame really didn't matter. The lesson was always painful. Even though there were many students in the School of Hard Knocks, I usually made the dean's list. I was a very diligent student at this school. In other words, I was a real fool. We often looked at animals and we demean them for their stupidity. When one person calls another bird brain, it isn't complimentary of the person's intelligence, but a reference to his lack of mental power. Yet it seems that animals are wiser than humans in some areas. An animal will not go after bait if it suspects a trap. They are very cautious and wary. If the fish sees the fishing line, it won't bite. This is not so with humans. We are truly a stupid lot. We step into the same traps over and over, thinking we are going to somehow escape the long-term suffering, or we decide that momentary pleasure is worth it. The thief could get a job to buy the things he steals, but he chooses to steal despite putting his reputation, freedom, and future all in jeopardy. How many times has an addict who finally kicks his drug, alcohol, or cigarette habit without any rational explanation has fallen off the wagon? They fought through the point where their addiction no longer had a physical or chemical grasp on them, and then for no reason, when confronted with the bait, with the trap in full view, they still go for it. They become so short-sighted that they ignore the long-term misery their habit brings, so that they can taste that momentary pleasure. This was the story of my life. Live for today and try to pick up the pieces tomorrow. Make the same bad decisions over and over again, somehow hoping that the same rotten consequences wouldn't be the result. This seems almost unbelievable, but months after my near-death encounter, I found myself living the same wicked, destructive lifestyle. You would think that something like the threat of being maimed or killed would encourage someone to make a new start in life, but I had tried to do the new leaf thing numerous times before and always found myself drawn repeatedly into the lure of easy money and loose living. Then I would look at myself in the mirror days, weeks, or months later and have to admit failure again. Why try something I knew I didn't have the strength or desire to complete? Why give up power and easy money for the promise of a quiet, boring life? One night I paced back and forth in the parking lot of a nightclub where I worked. I wasn't actually working that night, at least not the legal type of work for which I paid taxes anyway. Tonight, I was working my other job, my salesman job, where I sold people things they thought would make their life happier and more fulfilled, or at least make them forget their troubles for a momentary thrill. To be honest, I couldn't have given a rip whether they ever reached their goals. All I cared about was making myself a little richer, and they were only a means to that end. My associate was late as usual, and as usual I was impatiently waiting for him to finally come through with the goods. It was always the same lying story. The stuff will be there tomorrow. And then I would phone him, freaking out, cursing a blue streak. Tonight better be different. He swore on his mother's grave that he would produce the goods tonight. Everyone was feeling some extra tension. My old friend and some of his associates had been busted for dealing drugs and selling black market guns. Just as I was at the point of exploding in anger, grinding my teeth down to nothing, I spotted my associate's vehicle. Finally, my stuff had arrived. I quickly walked over to greet him, all anger and impatience gone. Joining him in the front seat, I chatted with him about business for around 10 or 15 minutes. We talked about what goods would be coming, what the prices were going to be, and then the conversation drifted to my old friend and what happened to him. Maybe we should cool it for a bit, I suggested. Wait until some of the heat from the cops cools down. My associate listened to my advice, and then, with all of the confidence in the world, he looked me straight in the eye and said, "Don't worry so much. I'll never get caught." In the end, people will believe what they want to believe. 1,000 people can tell them the truth, but they will keep searching until they find an advisor who will tell them just what they wanted to hear all along. I listened to my associate, wanting very badly to believe that everything was going to be business as usual, and I accepted his words as if he had cornered the market on seeing into the future. We exchanged goods for cash. I stepped out of his vehicle and we said our goodbyes. What I did not know that night was that these goodbyes would be our last.